Welcome to Behind the Blaze. This is the Visual Arts Department with a conversation with Mrs. Dietz.
Mr. Carter.
And Miss Anderson.
And today we're going to discuss a few of our favorite projects from drawing, jewelry, textiles, ceramics, and art too. Miss Anderson, could you start by sharing student favorite from drawing class?
Well, one of the things that my kids in drawing class tell me they like the most, or they're most happy with the results in the end, because sometimes they don't like me during the process of learning, is the realistic candy drawing in colored pencil. So we do a deep dive in colored pencil. They learn shading techniques that professional artists use. And I demonstrate and we practice and we demonstrate and practice over and over again. After several weeks of building up our skill set, then we'll go in and the students pick a candy, any type of candy, and they layer and layer and layer colored pencils until they have a colored pencil candy drawing, and they are always fantastic. So that's one of their favorites.
Do you use any other art supplies when you're working on those?
On that one, it's just colored pencil, but throughout the year, we'll use all kinds of drawing tools, alcohol markers, which are what professional artists use. They're markers that you can blend the colors together to create depth and realistic colors. We'll use pastels, different types of ink, so gel pens and fine liners, also charcoal, and then always, of course, when we say graphite, that's what we normally refer to as pencil, but in the art world we call that graphite. So a lot of realistic drawing techniques and lots of opportunities to learn new skills and then use those skills in a drawing of your own choice.
I think it's really important for artists to experiment with multiple art supplies, so I think it's really cool you add that to your drawing class. Do you have anything that you'd like to share from jewelry and textiles?
Well, in jewelry and textiles, we focus, in the jewelry aspect, we focus on using wire and learning jewelry techniques using pliers. And so we'll make all types of jewelry starting off with just wire and pliers. So we'll learn earrings and clasps and closures and lots of different techniques for making almost any jewelry out of just basic wire. And that's one of the things that I think kids like the most, and they really astound me with the creativity and the skill level that they bring to the table. I love for our midterm, I gave them a little jewelry kit that had pearls and gold beads in it, and they all made their own set of earrings for their midterm, and they were amazing. And some of my kids even had people buy them. So they came up and said, "Who made this? I want to buy it off of this person." So that's one of my favorite things that we do in jewelry. We also learn different textiles. We do embroidery, and this year we did crochet. I had an MTSU student who came in and taught crochet to the class. We do different things with yarn, macrame, and other jewelry techniques too, bead weaving, and lots of things in jewelry and textiles. It's probably, for me, it's the most fun because that's kind of what my background is.
We use a variety of materials in art too as well, and I think that's probably one of my favorite classes right now. We make one-of-a-kind art dolls, and students are currently working on this. They've been working on it for a very long time. They start with planning their character's background. It kind of starts out like a creative writing assignment where they're really trying to plan the background history of the character, if the character has any enemies or anything like that. All those details go into different character designs. And then, of course, they sketch and figure out what they want their art doll to look like. They're all fantasy based, so they could be a goblin, a troll, we've got a dragon. There's some people doing things with wings. It's really neat. They make them using an oven-baked clay, wire, fabric, paint, and just other things that we can find around, found objects. It's really fun watching the art dolls come alive when the students are working on them, and the more and more that they add, the more realistic they seem. At the end of the project, we also do a photo shoot outside with them, so they look like they're in the forest or in nature, which makes them look even more realistic. It's definitely a passion unit for me. I make my own at home, and I enjoy seeing what my students create, even if they're significantly different than what I do. Mr. Carter, do you have anything from ceramics class that you'd like to talk about? It's a different type of clay than what I use.
Yeah, I use a mid-fire earthenware. You can take up to 3 clay classes. The first class, Clay 1, is the first whole semester is learning different techniques. So you have to be able to use these different techniques, no different than if you were a carpenter or whatever. You have to have these certain skills sets, and clay is a lot more different than people would think. There's a lot. I'd say the most important thing in clay is consistency. It's not as easy to do small pieces attached to large pieces. You can't attach things that are wet to semi-wet to dry things. So we get into all that. The very basic, what you would do in an elementary school would be a pinch pot. That's the first thing we do. Then we do coil, which is a lot more easier to manipulate the clay and to go different directions, whether it be an animal or a pot, or you can layer these coil pots on top of each other to get higher and further out and so forth. But within that and the slab building, which is the third, you must attach clay to clay using a slip and score technique. And so I have to teach them how to do that. If you don't do that, things don't hold up. Sometimes I pick them up to put them in the kiln and they won't even survive that. So the kids will learn that third one, which is slab, my favorite, because it's very symmetrical, it's very clean. It is, there's certain things it's better to do coil than slab. I just prefer the slab technique because of the consistency and the symmetry of it. And then we do molds, like a bowl or plate. I have about 7-8 different molds, and they make a bowl, a plate, or whatever they want to make using in the mold. And then the last one we do is sculpting, which is either addition or subtraction. The best way is subtraction. Great sculptors in history typically did that. They would take a piece of marble, or they'd practice with clay, and they would have a big giant piece. The problem with that, with clay, is trapping water and or air inside. And then the last one, which we do after that, the kids have the second semester to where I have a list of things, pretty much anything they could possibly do, and they choose from that. Once they show me they can do these techniques, then I let them do whatever they want to do within reason. And then you can have a second and third year, and both of those are advanced clay classes to where it's pretty much a studio class. These students request to do certain thing, either a long-term project or multiple small projects, and then they work on that throughout the whole year.
So talk about your painting class.
Okay, in my painting class, we're currently making our own pigments to paint with using natural dyes. So things like flowers, even dirt we're painting with, and they still look like really beautiful paintings. And when you're finished with them, it's hard to even tell that it was painted using dirt. We don't only paint with dirt, of course. We also paint with watercolor, acrylic paint, and we have a water-based oil paint that we're going to experiment with here at the end of the year, I'm hoping, if not next year for sure. And it's just a lot of fun. You get to pick what you paint most of the time, and we just talk about different techniques and experiment a lot with the paint.
Because I know some of my AP art kids have been coming in to use your water-based oil paints. So that leads me to one of our last courses that's just open to seniors, which is AP 2D Art, and that is a portfolio-based class. There's not a test at the end. You submit a portfolio of artwork that you work on all year long, and it centers around something you're interested in or experiments that you want to do. And the whole class, all you do all year is make art in the classroom, and my job is just to coach you and help you to create the best, most interesting artwork, and to think about your artwork and experiment and revise, and then all of your artwork gets turned in digitally to the College Board, and then they will score your portfolio. But we want you to score as high as possible on that, but the main thing that students tell me that they get out of it is just the being able to sit down and process their thoughts and make art in their own direction. And that's, I think, my kids really grow, I think, as artists and as individuals, which is really our goal, is to grow our students as individuals. So that's an AP art class that's also available to seniors.
And I love how I'll have some of your students that are in AP come ask for feedback from me. Not that they don't ask you, but just to get another perspective. So I think it's really good for our listeners to remember, especially if they're students, that they can come to any of the art teachers to get feedback on their work. And I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but I actually had Mr. Carter as a teacher when I went to school here, and I had him for ceramics as one of my classes. So I thought I'd talk about one of my favorite projects from his class. I was reading Beowulf in English, and I decided I would make Grendel in ceramics class. So I made a bust of Grendel, and he had all these snaggly teeth and a really big head and ears, and he was just the grossest, weirdest looking thing ever. And I had a lot of fun. I remember where I sat in his room and all the other projects. It was just a lot of fun getting to make and choose what I made after I learned those basic techniques.
You were a really good student.
Oh, thank you very much. You were a good teacher.
We love when students integrate something they're learning in another part of their life into their artwork. It makes it more interesting for them and us.
Yeah, there was another student, Sveta, that was in your class. Y'all graduated the same year, and I ran into her 3-4 years afterwards. She was going to MTSU, and she was studying something in science. I don't remember what it was, chemistry or something. And she goes, "So guess what my minor is, Mr. Carter?" I said, "What?" She said, "Art." I said, "That's a win."
And you may actually be able to see one of Sveta's artworks hanging up in our hallways sometime soon. She made a beautiful mosaic of flowers and there's like the sky and the moon, I think.
I think so.
But it's quite lovely. We found it when we were unpacking things, so we're going to hang it up. But it looks like that's all we have the time for today. Thanks to Behind the Blaze for having us, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Keep creating and go Blaze!